Hi everyone, this is Karak with ACG bringing you another review, and this fine day it's Anno 2205, a game of civilization building, or should I say expanding, on the PC. The Anno series has some love-hate cycle with gamers, offering plenty to enjoy, but in the last title, surrounding it with online requirements and odd digital rights management options that was the equal of saying to someone, here's a giant space you can play in, but only do so with 3 friends, and if one of them leaves, you have to wait 30 days to replace them with another pal. Here, multiplayer is stripped out, digital rights management appears to be nowhere to be seen, and you are left with a jump into the future. Let's see if Ubisoft got this jump right. As always, if you like the video, please subscribe. So here's the review for Anno 2205. Drug addiction, mass marketing, catamarans that double as rock crushers, living on the moon, and quests with the depths of a reality TV show plot. As always, graphics are up first. This game is so damn colorful, it looks like a Sears exploded. I mean, for a game about building and expanding civilizations, with the main building blocks obviously going to be concrete and steel, the aesthetic here is some of the best I have ever seen in a building game. Positively everything shines or glows, and better yet, almost everything has moving parts, and not just little spacemen or dancers in a street park, but scientifically valid reproductions of scientific and manufacturing machinery that makes identifying a house from an ore processing plant easily done via visuals alone. In fact, the move from text to visuals for much of the requirements of your people is a massive improvement. Aside from a few quibbles here and there, if my people needed a hospital, I knew, police department, I knew. But more than that, when I built everything and laid it down, this ended up actually looking like a full-blown city of the future, and it helped dramatically with the game's handling of streets and tile meshing. Honestly, one of the best looking and visually arresting games of this type that I think I've ever seen. However, it does come with some problems. On a 980 GTX, even at 1920p, I was having to turn down draw distance or shader levels to get acceptable frame rates, and that means above 30 locked. And when switching from full screen to windowed a couple times, the game introduced a memory leak that would have made a Cray computer weep. The thing skyrocketed in virtual RAM usage and utterly crashed frame rates down to single digits, very low single digits. Now, luckily a save and reset restored the world to its manufacturing, plant harvesting, gene splicing, and dam building beauty. But it was still there as a problem. Additionally, each time you go to a new land, the game has to load it, and though you stay in the overview world while this happens, and that map shows you the various lands and the moon and who owns what, the graphics take major hits to frame rate, even on an SSD as things are loading. Doesn't take too long, but something to be aware of. Honestly though, as a package, I just have to say I think this is one of the best looking games of its kind, especially in the strategic view, not so much in the battle view. I really had a pleasure playing through this, and the aesthetics that you get while you're doing it comes at a kind of a penalty to the required power, but it all looked just damn fine. Sound, music, and voice.
Always stay one step ahead of the competition. Yes, yes, hello and such. Now tell me, will you take on this assignment?
On our way.
A question of security. Your collaboration would be...
Open fire.
And as always, sound is up first in this trilogy of awesome. From the roar of the hellish helium fires of heavy matter machines to the explosions of the not-so-atom bombs being dropped during battle, the sounds were mostly hit, and sometimes miss, with the main strategy sections and their divisible buildings being the highlight, and battle sadly being awashed in some muddy sounds as multiple weapons and special effects really wanted to battle it out for all of my ear's time. I would say the sound is good, but there's some hit and miss there. Music. Now, this is sedate stuff that you expect from a builder of this type, with sweeping grandeur during building phases and fairly rote battle marches and techno during battle. Nothing to write home about, but certainly not overstaying its welcome by any means. Just there, with a couple standout moments. Voice. Now, First, there's actually a good amount of voice, as many different factions are constantly fighting for your attention by either being best friends or trying to crater your civilization back to a time when monkeys ruled the earth. The voices are, for the most part, done well, but mixing was at times troublesome, with some characters with softer speaking voices coming across really quiet on my rig. Despite switching into various sound setups and headphones, full stereo, and surround systems, I could never actually get it to really sound right. Additionally, and for me guys, this is a big one, once again we're left with a sound setup that's pretty pedestrian in its practicalities with not many options. Gameplay. It's actually fairly simple. You're jetted a bit into the future from the past Anno games and asked to build in one of 3 spots, each offering small changes to size and gameplay. Once there, your main job is to build up your civilization, please your civilians, and at some point, make it to the moon. At some point. Let's remember that for the future. The story is actually very throwaway, with political factions vying for power and leveling up alongside you, and at various times offering you deals or just ignoring you until you show up on their doorstep and Scrooge McDuck their lands out from beneath them by buying everything in sight that they own. The game is really separated into 3 major parts: the strategy and building, the warfare, and the trading. Now, first up, the building. By building, you need and consume resources, and buildings you put up together, whether they're freeform or connected to specific ore and natural resource sites around the game world, they supply the juice to get your beatniks into spacesuits and fulfill any random requirements the game may have on different items. Everything costs something here, and Anno does a pretty spectacular job outlining a large number of resources, many of which won't be the same depending on where you build and what planet you're on. The nice thing is that the requirements for some locations offer a strategic thoughtfulness to them. For example, in the Arctic, you need to build near factories to keep your people warm and neck deep in both fish and, obviously, various lung cancers. On the moon, you have to build under energy shield, otherwise meteors seek out your houses like a human version of malware bites. Now, during the building aspects of the game, you have a main vehicle. This is your avatar, and though not used extensively, occasionally you do side missions with it. And that's where Anno hits a pretty big snag. I've rarely ever been so bored as I was with these quests. Quests that you don't have to do, and they've promised us that, but for the most part, they're sort of like free-to-play, purchasable microtransactions. If you don't, you could be grinding for some time. Again, you don't have to do them, but they're absolutely relentless in reminding you of their presence both in voice and text form, and it's irritating when all you want to do is put together the perfect symmetry of functional city building and some ass keeps telling you to grab some bushes, throw them into a catamaran, and sail across the world to deliver holly berries to some multinational corporation that could just as easily have grown their own. Now, once you build up a bit and please your civilians by making sure they have the required parts for a good life like drugs, food, and energy, you can expand both on the same map and also taking over other plots of land from nations if you have the money. Here's where I got lost a bit. 8 hours a bit. The requisites for moving up to the next run of civilization, from the butt-scratching hard workers to, say, the drug-loving scientists with their anti-aging serums, all of which are required to unlock new technologies and get to the moon, they're just a little bit confusing at times. Now, one is in quest form, where they state what you need to do to achieve a specific enlightenment, but also there's a fact that you can't have any supplied item type lower than required as well. Now, that means if your places aren't set up with surpluses of every single kind of item, or at the least balanced, even something like friggin' fish, you are SOL. Now, that's only when you want to upgrade your civilization, which means during a lot of the game you won't have things metered out like that. But its inherent desire to force balance sort of hurts Anno's fun factor, and it boggled my mind until I figured out what the problem was, because for the life of me, I'd fulfilled the quests I needed to on the planet to upgrade, but could not figure out this secondary requirement that really isn't put on you at any other time until you want to do this particular step. Now, is that some type of game-breaking problem? Of course not. I just missed it, and in fact, it was so confusing that I emailed their tech team, then told them that I had a bug. And what that means is you won't be making a fast and loose military-type organization that somewhat treats its people poorly in a race for the stars, nor will you really be an upright nation of amazing civilians without various building items or supplies that every single other group has, or you would have, depending on different games. In fact, other than size, every nation from every person is sort of going to have somewhat the same overall things. The requirement for a perfect balance removes just a little bit of that freedom and individuality that I expected, and I now understand why there is no multiplayer here, because I'm not quite sure exactly how that would all play out. Now, that being said, once I figured it out, I was on my way to the moon. I made sure that my 8 hours of taking over various plots on Earth for little to no reason didn't go to waste, though, by setting up trade routes, which basically is nothing more than the clicking of 2 places, picking a foodstuff or item, and then ron-popeeling it and setting it and forgetting it like a damn Thanksgiving turkey. That is if you're connected online. If you are not, some of those options are restricted, like buying from the moon base or voting on various completely mundane and ultimately shallow political decisions that gave you small little bonuses. But nowhere is the past transgressions of Anno games really seem to be hiding within this title when it comes to mostly the online versus online bits. That didn't bother me. Now, moving forward, you also do some military missions, or at least that's what it seemed like they thought you were doing, because really what this turned into was nothing more than me having a bunch of boats with 3 hot buttons and rock, paper, scissoring my way across the enemy's land, blowing up mines and looking for a red flashing button on the minimap to indicate my goal. The only thing I could compare the shallowness of this to would be a tablet game. Though you can upgrade your ships, it's not really customizable. Just hit a button, they're upgraded, and now you hit the button during battle and something bigger happens, or shinier. Another weakness to this is the map is locked at a particular vertical degree, offering less viewing distance than the other parts of the game, and most of the enemies look pretty much the same as you, but they borrowed Tron styling and have red neon on their submarines instead of blue. This part of the game really was just the weakest overall offering. Now, after kicking some political enemy butt, I felt I was ready. So once on the moon, the developer described hardest place to build. Actually didn't have much of a hard time at all. You set out with different goals, but ultimately fulfill them the same way by making beautiful cities, occasionally getting into shallow battles, and then finding out that on the moon, the quests actually matter more. One of the major building components is tied into a series of quests on the moon, like those prior, but this series of quests unlocks a particular material generator that is orders of magnitude more important than anything you did back on Earth. I still did it, but I really didn't want to because those quests are incredibly boring. Fun factor: I had a blast. Yes, 8 hours was either wasted or invested in further growth, depending on your idea of futility. But the game is not only incredibly enjoyable, it's a pleasure to watch things grow and work around you. And though you're always fighting someone needing something somewhere, it's the mini-maxing and balancing where the game actually shines, even if at times it is a little heavy-handed with it. Is it sandbox? Sure, with quests built in and requirements, but they don't really need to be met and you can continue playing in any location. The only thing I would say to that is due to the limited building areas and no random maps, sandbox won't last as long in this title as I think people might be expecting it to. That being said, I adored my time with Anno, and there's a great deal here that is solidly improved from the last title, in my honest opinion. Even more so, other titles in particular, this game just sort of shines. It may not always have the freeform feel, but it's got it where it counts, which is solid gameplay built around the cycle of building, requirements, and resourcing. So as you guys all know, I rate games on a buy, wait for a sale, rent, or never touch it again rating scale. This is actually a buy. The title offers an incredible amount of gameplay, including 8 hours I got lost and continued to enjoy myself. Plain and simple fact is, there's a boatload of content here. It's actually very enjoyable. The online requirement part is really pared down to the point to where it didn't even matter. In fact, I ended up getting disconnected a couple times and didn't even realize that something was being impacted until I clicked on one particular guy. So I honestly feel that they've made some really good steps here. Very enjoyable, beautiful game, really fun time. So that's it for me. I hope you guys liked the review. If you did, hit thumbs up. If you didn't, hit thumbs down. And as always, peace out.